one thing that was on my mind recently is just expectations. Like, it seems that rather they're communicated or uncommunicated, two people go into a marriage with expectations financially, but they're not articulated, and that usually leads to some type of disagreement or some type of separation. So financial expectation could be like a mom to be saying, once we do have our first child, I intend to transition from the workforce and be home. Or a dad, for that matter, saying, hey, I plan to transition and be home. Or I want to, retire at this age in this location. Or, I expect us to make this amount by this age. That's what I mean by financial expectations. And usually what I found, they're not articulated. So the question that I kind of have for you today is like, did you have any financial expectations of us when we first got married of, what we would be or some type of dream, whether it was articulated or non-articulated?
Okay. Well, I know the whole, transitioning to be a stay-at-home mom, and that was not one of them. I know that.
Okay.
To be honest with you,
Sure.
I don't think I ever had an actual expectation of an actual dollar amount, like, oh, by this age, we will make this much. But I think I did have an expectation of a type of lifestyle I wanted for us. I was expecting for us, what I mean? And therefore, obviously funds to support such a lifestyle.
Okay.
And by lifestyle, I don't mean like, lifestyles of the rich and famous or anything like that. You didn't know. I didn't articulate it.
Before we get into this lifestyle, let me just mention we're currently at Tepui Donuts here in Raleigh. If you're in Raleigh, you're looking for a donut, Tepui Donuts are awesome. I'm trying to do my best not to dive in right now. Look at these.
You almost dropped it. You almost dropped it.
Okay, and I hope you can see those. Anyway, we're going to get into those at some point. But before that, let's get into these expectations of lifestyle. Tell me more about this.
So what I imagined was that we would have a lifestyle where as though we would be able to be generous, to friends and family, gifts, help, support, in our community. But also, too, that we would have the financial funds to support travel. That was really big for me going in. And I know that's interesting because you weren't as much of a traveler as I was when we first got married.
I wasn't thinking it was interesting because I wasn't a traveler. It's interesting because I was a entry-level contact center agent. So I'm wondering how in the world
I got high
I'm gonna make this. Basically, she married me for my potential, y'all. I'm just finding that out 19 years later. Anyway, continue on.
Well, I mean, again, I don't mean like, big lavish trips to Dubai or anything, but just, being able to take a trip at least twice a year, somewhere. See something new, meet new people. Just see the little bit of the world. Anyhow, so that was part of it. And then as far as home, I grew up mostly living in an apartment most of my life, and so I wasn't necessarily aspiring for a big lavish house. A townhome was like, would have been nice for me, so I did expect that we would purchase a home. I was expecting it to be maybe a condo or a townhouse. And then just the ability that if there was something we really wanted, and when I say wanted, I'm usually thinking about more like experiences and stuff. I'm more of an experience gift giver than a stuff gift giver. Everyone's different. Want to go to a festival in New Orleans, for a jazz festival or something like that. That would be something we could pull together, save up, and make happen. So just being in a place where, our finances weren't, not that finances shouldn't give you some boundaries, right, to how you live your life, but our finances wouldn't be restricting us from experiencing just life together, having a little adventures together. So that's kind of what I had in mind. I never articulated it. You are right, correct. But that's what I
had a mentor say he did his best to organize his life in such a way where the decisions were a matter of time, not money. And that seems like a little bit of...
That's a great way to articulate it.
Kind of where you're headed. is it better to articulate these things up front, or is it better to, I guess, reveal them over time? And I'm just thinking about pressure as
yeah. See, that's the thing. You would have taken that as like
assignment.
Like a list,
Yeah.
like that you had to check off.
Exactly.
And that's not what I would have intended.
Okay.
But I do think there are some expectations that, you do need someone to sign off on that, so to speak, before moving forward into the relationship.
Right.
I think the stay-at-home one expectation, like I didn't have that expectation, but if I did, definitely would need you to know that before we got married.
Okay.
And kind of make sure we were both bought into that plan. I mean, again, less stuff happens. It may not, work out or whatever. You never know what happens in the future, but at least that the person, you both would have the same intention, that would be what would happen, once children entered into the relationship. Absolutely. You got to sign off on that before.
So I'm thinking about a term that I'm just going to phrase called EI, like expectation indicators. Is there any way you're dating somebody and you can kind of pick up on that?
I don't know about that.
You know what? You're talking about a $50,000 wedding ceremony. Can I expect?
Are people talking about wedding ceremonies on their dates?
Yeah.
Because I think that's.
I'm saying like you're engaged now. You're on a date. You're engaged.
Okay. I thought you meant like.
No, I'm not talking about first date.
Hi,
but maybe,
my name is Natasha.
Maybe,
I want a $50,000 wedding.
Maybe first date. It's just like, okay, what are the expectation indicators you can glean from?
I feel like this is getting into dangerous territory.
It's getting
of
to
like,
investigation.
Hey fellas,
right.
How can you deduce
Don't
that,
get set up.
that the woman you just went on a first date with wants a $50,000 wedding?
No, but I've heard of men like on first, second, third date when it may be getting serious, taking their date to the mall and just trying to see what their patterns are, what their habits are.
That's entrapment. That's shocking.
You're just trying to see. Until you get your date in the field, quote unquote, you don't know how they're going to operate. It sounds so military. So anyway,
yeah, really.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that there aren't signs.
Sure.
Obviously, if you're in a new relationship, it's starting to get serious. Yes, you're going to observe things. You're going to observe someone's spending habits. You're going to observe, them talking about maybe upcoming future trips that they're planning or hoping to take. And you'll get some kind of indication of this probably is going to be something they expect in the future. Yeah. Yes. I just don't know if it should be cataloged, in such a formal way. Yeah. I think what it is that as those observations are made, it's a great time to have a conversation. Yeah. Like, I know you talked about having, paying this trip to Paris with your friends. Is that something, do you travel internationally a lot? You know what I mean? Or is that something new, and it sparked the conversation?
And we're talking more about leisure. There are other expectations like, hey, I plan to quit my job and start a business in 5 years.
Again, I think something that has to be talked about
Absolutely.
before.
Absolutely.
Yeah, before marriage, for sure.